Let's take a quick second and appreciate the beautiful packaging and presentation that Iwata has here for us. We'll go along the back. As you can see, there's some information along the side about the airbrush. They have the different variations of the Micron that are available. They have seemed to remove the Micron SB and have replaced it with a Takumi, and the different levels of detail that we're able to achieve with this airbrush. Pretty neat. Absolute precision. Now that we got all the contents out of the box, you can see we have this beautiful brushed middle box, super heavy duty, much prettier than the original red one in my opinion. It also came with a Iwata microfiber cloth, which is pretty nice. We'll go ahead and open it up here. And as you can see, we're presented with a beautiful airbrush. Iwata surely hasn't cut any corners here. We have the 24mm side cup, we have our nozzle wrench, our moisture trap, and our lube, and the Takumi itself. Absolutely stunning. Here's some of the loose leaf that's come with the airbrush. We have our instruction manual. I don't use mine much, but for this part explosion list, which is pretty nice for ordering parts. We also have a spray pattern test that I'm assuming Kirk has done for us. He's tested my airbrush, I appreciate that. And we also have a sticker. Let's take a closer look at the airbrush itself and start with a unique square trigger that I happen to find very comfortable. Along the side here we have a peg that seals off one side or another, depending on if you're left-handed or right. This allows a lot of flexibility and personal preference. I personally myself have had a long background with t-shirt painting and have used a lot of side feed airbrushes over the years, so I do prefer it on the left-hand side. And it also feels a lot safer for me to have my finger here on the cup itself along the body of the airbrush, even though it does fit pretty snug and tight. But I am trying to get used to using it on the right hand side because it does clear up that line of sight. Now along the back of the airbrush you can see we have a cutaway handle and adjustment screw. The adjustment screw can screw in, and this keeps the trigger from pulling all the way back. The adjustment screw also has a place to keep your crown cap. A cool feature that I like about the Iwata Microns is this little viewing port. You can see in here that we have our packing screw, and what I like is that if the packing screw ever does leak, it's not going to leak into the trigger mechanism. Not unless you have wet paint on your needle and you pull it back through the airbrush. Now looking at our head assembly, we have our 0.18 head, needle, and nozzle setup that can also be fitted with the 0.23 needle, head, and nozzle assembly. As you can see here, I've chosen to buy a second Micron Takumi, as my future plans are to add a 0.23 for heavier pigmented paints like opaque white. A pretty major change that they made to the Micron Takumi is that they changed the cup to be more of a gravity feed style, unlike the Micron SB, which fed more of a siphon fed style. This cup here, it is a little big, but this does come off and it does fit like a smaller cup from the Neos. I don't have one on hand, but I do have a big volume production. I think this is a 1/2 ounce one. And this kind of has the same flow to it, so it has that gravity feed style for the paint to flow through the airbrush a little easier. If you're liking this video so far, and you like anything and everything airbrush, I would like to invite you to subscribe and share my content. It would do wonders for my small channel here. Thank you. One more major update from the Micron SB to the Micron Takumi was the distance from the trigger to the tip. Now it's a little bit shorter and you can really choke up on the airbrush and get that drawing feel, and yet there's still enough room to get back up on the airbrush and have that softer, looser hand. Okay, let's run it through its paces. I'm going to be spraying the Cretex illustration paint straight out of the bottle. This will give us a good idea of how the brush handles and how the paint atomizes through the airbrush. I'm going to speed up this part and I'll get back to you with my final results. I'm at a pretty high pressure. I've been watching a lot of Steve Gibson, so let's turn it down. I'm gonna spray it. Let's go to about 20 psi. After a little bit of freehand airbrushing, you can see this airbrush is extremely good at doing fine detail. Look at some of these fine lines I was able to achieve, and some of these dots here. Very good, and everything I'd expect out of a fine detail airbrush, and possibly more held back by my artistic ability. As you can see, I'm quite happy with my purchases of the Iwata Takumis. I now own 3 of them, including the Eclipse version with the 0.35 needle and nozzle. Let me know if you guys would like to see a review of this one in the comments below. And the only thing I've found wonky using the Takumis, and I think that goes for any side feed airbrush, is how they sit in an airbrush holder. Unless you have an airbrush hose hooked up to them, it's kind of scary. Iwata does sell this airbrush stand, and this cradles them pretty nicely. Before I leave a more in-depth review of the Iwata Takumis, I'd like to spend 90 days with them, working with them, testing them on a bunch of different projects. If you guys would like to keep up with my findings, subscribe and hit that notification bell.